I will bring in Frank Auckland to have Q&A afterwards, and I hope to be able to answer if you have some questions. Let me find Frank here. Where did he go in my list? Oh. Here we are. I'm gonna unmute you, Frank. Okay. There you are.
All right, great. Thank you, Mats. Lots and lots of good food for thought there. I've got a couple of questions, and I'm sure there'll be probably some more coming in, and if not, I've got some of my own. First question regards lithium. Since Pons and Fleischmann used some lithium in their electrolysis reaction, is it possible they actually saw a similar reaction to what Rossi has been seeing? What do you think?
Well, I will give a general answer. Is that I have not going into detail to every scientific aspect of neither of Fleischmann and Pons or the Rossi one, even though I've been reading all about it. And the reason is that until we have an understanding or a theory that could start being accepted by many people, I think we've got so much more to discover yet to have theories about it. Yet, I mean, from a basic principle, I would believe that this kind of reaction is so rare that it should only have one basic phenomenon describing it. And I tend to believe that the phenomenon would be the same both in the experiments that Fleischmann and Pons did and the one that Ross is doing. It would surprise me if we have two so rare phenomena that are different from each other, having the same kind of effect. And since lithium is involved, that's a good reason to believe that. That's another good reason to believe that, yes. It's the same, basically the same phenomenon.
Okay, so now lithium is being used a lot in batteries these days. Think of Tesla's Gigafactory. Should we be concerned about running out of lithium if we start getting it used in the...
No, I don't. I really don't think so. I haven't studied the amounts yet, but I mean, if you can have that extreme amount of energy coming out from such a small amount of matter, we will never run out of fuel. And by the way, another aspect that we don't know about anything yet is that it's the question if we could possibly recycle the fuel, the lithium that's being used in the reaction, because we don't know even the end product. We don't know if we could develop the reaction to produce other end products than the end products that we're doing today. There is so, I mean, we're really at such a basic level. And as Callander used to point out to me, he even said that he was an experimental physicist, and he said that it's too early to make any theory because we got too little data. We're gonna have these. There are so many ways to get lost in the nuclear science around this that we need much more data to start doing making theories. And the first tentative theories that are being presented based on Ross's reaction, the one that he presented himself together with Cook, which is quite a controversial theory, but may be possible. I think that it should also be considered as a first very early step of trying to explain this. But I would not be surprised if we end up with a completely different explanation in the end.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that the Pons and Fleischmann effect had been replicated about 100 times. You think?
There are more than 100. You can go to the website, the online library called LENR hyphen CANR.org. I think I'm right. Yeah. Which is run by Jed Rothwell. And you're going to find a document there listing over 100 published observations, experiments in peer-reviewed journals of important cold fusion results. And some of them are Fleischmann and Pons replications, exactly Fleischmann and Pons replications. Others are different, but in the same area.
Do you think this is getting more attention from the theoretical community nowadays? Do you get that sense?
Mm, I really don't know. I would believe so. Yes. There are some people that have given contributions lately that probably wouldn't have gotten into this if it wasn't for Rossi and other reports around this.
I have a question of my own, actually, just to throw in here. You published an interview with Fulvio Fabiani recently. Could you tell us a bit about who he is and how you got in touch with him and what he told you, some of the things he told you?
Yeah, that was quite a fascinating interview, I must say. I thought a long time that I wanted to contact him because Fabiani got into contact with Rossi in 2012, I think, 1 year after me, by more or less by coincidence through a common friend of theirs, him and Rossi. And at that time, Fabiani is an expert in electricity and electronics. And at that time, Rossi, who is not an expert in electricity and electronics, needed a technician at that point to help him develop the control system and develop that further. And actually, that was from the beginning, I noticed that was one of the weak points of the ECAT setup that I saw. So since then, Fabiano is being a very close collaborator with Rossi, and supposedly, I imagine that he should have seen things and know things that hadn't been told before. And since I speak Italian again, I thought that would be a good thing, just talk to him and see what he could tell. And he was very open-minded, actually, when I talked to him. And I learned a lot of things. And he told me about how he met Rossi, how he actually didn't believe at all in the ECAT technology when he first saw it, but how he was convinced after some time when he saw results, and he recalculated several times, and he in the end understood there was nothing to it. It couldn't be explained by anything else than a real reaction. And by the way, things that he said, another thing that I didn't say now during this presentation was that some of the things, apart from the measurements I did in the beginning, that actually convinced me was when the reaction went awry, out of control. Because one thing is to make a measurement on a perfect situation that could be faked, but it's very difficult to fake something that goes out of control. And there are some of those situations that have been reported to me by people I'm talking to that really made impression on me. Anyway, what Fabiani told me was, and it's also one aspect of when I'm talking to Rossi. Lots of people have a very clear idea of his critics about who he is. Rossi is a fraudster and he's just faking this and everything. But it's easy to say before you meet a person. When you meet a person, you start to get all those other impressions about that person that you don't have when you just read about him. And you can make assessments and valuations about that person that's very difficult to make if you just read about it. And today I've got my picture of Rossi, and I trust many of the things he told me, and together with the fact that it would be very difficult to make a conspiracy theory about every person being involved in all those things, it's just so difficult to find an explanation that would be based on fake experiments to produce those results, together with the impression that the persons that you meet will give you. And the same thing with Fabiani. When you talk to this person about how he was not really interested, but he was involved, and he decided to start working closely with Rossi because he found it so interesting. And he told me about the experiments that they are doing right now. He told me about how he's working with 1 megawatt reactor every day and collects about 1 million data samples every day that he's analyzing. And he told me about the experiments with ECAT-X. Amazed, I don't know how to explain that, but with a fascination that it's difficult to fake. It's a fascination about someone who has seen something really, and is amazed at the power of this new reaction. And you can read the interview. The interview is on the blog of An Impossible Invention, and it's also on the blog of the New Energy World Symposium. It doesn't prove anything at all, but it's interesting to read, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got some business questions here. First one is, do you see any connection between recent oil price disruption and possible emergence of LENR?
Yeah, that's been discussed a lot. I've been talking to Torkel, who's running the Cifracall site, and he's been referring to investigations he's made and research he's made on the oil price and selling different kind of financial instruments and buying and what the banks are doing and then the big oil is doing and etc. And I mean, he's providing extremely interesting proof of a connection between the oil price and the news around low energy nuclear reactions. But yet, I mean, other people who are much more experts in this area than I am are skeptical, and I think that the explanation is basically what is well known about the what do you call it, the fracking oil technology and shale oil and about a political game between Russia, US, and Saudi Arabia, etc. Mm-hmm. I would believe that the news around Rasi would have some influence. I think it's difficult to think anything else, specifically as the Lugano report has been downloaded so many times, mm-hmm. and it's even been mentioned in a white paper by BlackRock, the BlackRock fund. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it has some influence. And evidently, the latest news that we heard the other day that Saudi Arabia is going to put their oil company sell shares in their company. What is it called?
Aramco.
Aramco, right. It's also interesting because if the oil price goes down to $10, the Saudi Arabians will be the only ones who can produce oil and make money on that. So basically, they would get monopoly on oil production in the world at the price.
Well, what factors do you think are impeding business development in LENR right now? Do you think there are?
Could you repeat that question? What
factors do you think are impeding business development in LENR? If it's such a great thing, why are we?
Well, I think it's the same reason as people not talking about it. I mean, people inside this community that is already informed and interested are having discussions about if it's valid or not. And if you go outside of that community, you got people who really they don't have a clue what they should think about it. It could really be just stories, and there is not enough results present. There are not enough results presented that could make a conclusive impression on those people, making them start thinking that this is for real, this is going to happen. And until there is no such data or results, I don't think that any people could start doing business with it either, except for a few people who are really interested to be the first one doing it and have that advantage and take that risk.
What about toxic byproducts that could come from ECAT nickel lithium reactions, as are found in nickel chromium, which creates toxic byproducts?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what we don't know yet is what kind of side effects or side reactions that you could have if you have contamination, for example, in the fuel, or if somebody is trying to do this reaction and they make it in another way and with other materials. And there is actually a huge amount of things that we don't know that could happen. And this is one of the reasons why it should take some time before we can certify. If this technology is real, it would still take a lot of time to certify it for consumer use, because you have to make sure that those kind of effects won't occur with toxic byproducts or even radiation, because in the end, it is a nuclear reaction if it is what we believe. And with a nuclear reaction without radiation, you could have the suspicion that with some different materials or some other conditions, it could start produce radiation, which would be lethal. So, I mean, there is some knowledge missing yet, I believe, to have a consumer certification for this kind of technology.
Another question: what about radiation neutrons? What do you know about detecting neutrons? I think there was something you mentioned about that in the book. And
yeah. I don't. Now I'm not sure what you call it. The bubble chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm not an expert of the technology of detection of neutrons. I just know that you use those devices to detect neutrons. And at one occasion, Rossi told me that he saw, because his scientific advisor, Sergio Focardi, Italian professor, who also unfortunately passed away before we came this long. The first thing he helped Rossi with was to make an experimental setup that was safe and secure with detection of radiation and other things. And he, at one point with the bubble chambers, he told me that he had detected neutrons when the reactor exploded of high pressure. If he ever saw that again, I don't know. And what happened that time, we don't know. But I mean, at least if that is true, we have seen a sign, and I don't think it's the first time in this field that you have that kind of radiation, and that's important to understand why it happens and how it happens, because it's neutron radiation. Neutron radiation is very dangerous and very difficult to stop.
Here's an interesting one. How is it possible in 5+ years of development there has not been any industrial espionage?
Right. Yeah. I think the answer is still the same. I mean, how is it possible that if this technology is valid, that such a disruptive technology which will change the world in every aspect is being developed since 5 years publicly and no one talks about it? I mean, I'm the only mainstream journalist who have reported continuously about this in one single newspaper in the world. How is that even possible? I mean, and the answer lies again in the resistance to believe in something that is supposedly impossible, or is too good to be true, or that is against your interest. And I think it might be stupid, but the reason why there is no industrial espionage is simply for the same reason.
Okay. Do you think we'll hear LANR in the upcoming U.S. presidential election campaign?
No, I don't think so. No.
All right, for the same reason, probably, huh?
Yeah, for the same reason. Although I believe that at the top level in US, there is attention about this, for the simple reason that I personally met a person who is collaborating very close, a personal friend of Obama. And this person received my book, so he knows about it. And if he knows about it, I believe that Obama should know about it.
So when he said you received your book, did he read it, do you think? Or?
I don't know. But at least he got it, and
okay.
Yeah, and I think he also in the email exchange we had at that point, he involved some other person in the administration, and so the information is there. If they looked at it, I don't know, but
okay, all right. Any comments on Ross's recent comment of 20 kilowatts coming out of something the size of a cigarette packet?
I mean, if the ECAT X is what he says it is, this seems very possible. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think that once we have a scientific understanding of the process behind this phenomenon, we can do things that we don't even imagine about downscaling and upscaling and everything. So, yeah, not impossible at all.
Do you think the Chinese believe this is real more than other places? I mean, we know Tom Darden's been in China.
Well, if I believe it or not, I know there are good signs of discussions at high level going on. Since we could also explain that Thomas Darden and Cherokee Investment Partners have connections with China since several years with the operations that they have had before Rossi, and so they had a good situation to present also this new technology to China. And the thing with China is, if they trust and have a good connection with Thomas Darden, and Thomas Darden comes and talks about this, they have tons of reasons to listen to him because they've got an enormous problem with air pollution from coal, carbon. And they got a situation with a social structure they have in the country, which makes it probably much easier to roll out this kind of technology before having certifications than you would have, for example, in the Western countries. So they could bypass certain certifications that we wouldn't bypass in the Western countries. So they are in a hurry to find an alternative to coal. And if they find this kind of technology and it's easy for them to roll it out, I mean, together that tells us that China could actually be the country where this could be developed first and rolled out first.
Okay. Question here about your information about the ongoing test of the 1 megawatt plant. What percentage of certainty do you have that it is actually going ahead, or could we be bamboozled by?
Well, difficult to calculate percentages. I'm opposed to that because you can only calculate statistics on cases. But anyway, let me say like that. I know people who've been there, and the information they got, of course, I mean, theoretically, you could say that the people they spoke to were actors and telling what they should tell them, right. And everything was fake. But personally, I think it's very likely that it's going well. And the only thing that could happen is that the reactor breaks down before the end of this 365 days period, or that in the end, Industrial Heat and Rossi decide not to communicate the results, which would be very unfortunate, I think. But until now, I'm fairly convinced that it's going very well.
Okay. The last question I guess we can have here is, and this maybe you may not be able to answer this one, what about the pre-orders of the home ECATs that people have been sending to Rossi over the years? I think he's talked about a number of pre-orders. He hasn't taken any money yet, but he's taken a lot of orders. Do you know anything about those?
About the number, what number it is?
No, anything you know about those. Go ahead.
I think some of them collected by Ross himself, but some of them are collected also by the website ecat.com. And I talk regularly to those people, and they are very experienced about handling, web technology and every kind of statistics. So I think the numbers that Rossi quotes from time to time are real, and it shouldn't be difficult to send out an offer to all those people who have sent in their interest about buying an ECAT technology once you have it ready for production. So from that aspect, yeah, there's nothing strange about it at all.
Okay, let me ask you about that, because that brings up a question for me is,
yeah.
Okay, Leonardo Corporation, he's the CEO of Leonardo Corporation. ECAT.com now says that it is the official website of Leonardo Corporation.
Yeah.
Can you tell us who is behind the website? What do you know about Leonardo Corporation and its relationship with other licensees and industrial?
Okay, let me see. First of all, Rossi says that Leonardo Corporation is owned by a trust in the U.S. Trust, what is it? Trust.
Yeah, trust.
I know nothing about that. I've been trying to understand, but I know nothing about that. But apparently he says he's the CEO. ECAT.com is run by the Swedish English company Hydrofusion, which is a group. You can look up the interview I did with that company when they presented themselves at Ny Teknik. If you look for well, Hydrofusion, nytechnique.se, you will find the interview.
Okay.
There are 4 guys as the founders, and 2 of them are PhDs in particle physics. They are my age, more or less, and their first interest was to actually just to register the domain ecat.com and to try to see if they could have some deal with Rossi about selling this technology online. And then they continued discussion with him, and they are one of the licensees in Europe. They have certain territories in Europe, and I don't remember exactly which territories. They made this website, and they made an agreement with Rossi after discussions that it could become the official website of his, because they were better than him making the website. And he agreed. So that's the story behind the website. If you look at Hydrofusion, their website is very similar. But still, every aspect of the website, e.com, is the operative part of it is run by those guys. Now, about the other licensees, I don't know much. I've been in contact with them a few times, in the licensees in Europe and other parts of the world. I know they were offered a buyback of their license when Rossi started his collaboration with Industrial Heat, and a few of them accepted the buyback and others did not. And some of them have had discussions with Rossi about what was promised and not, and some of them are not very happy, it seems to me. But what will happen exactly, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be the last question. Last one. What is the state of relations between Industrial Heat and Rossi?
Oh yeah, that's being discussed a lot. I have not understand the reason, actually, because I haven't seen any sign or any I haven't found any reason to believe that there should be any difficult discussions between Industrial Heat and Rossi until now. I mean, as long as the test is going on, it's just operational as business as usual.
Okay.
What will happen then could be a question mark to me. I mean, once the test is over, I suppose there is some kind of agreement coming to an end. And at that point, what will happen between Industrial Heat and Rossi? What license do they have? Does it concern only the old ECAT technology, which is used in the 1 megawatt plant, or also the ECAT X, if that is being developed? And, that would be a question mark for me. But until now, I don't think there are any reasons to believe that there are any discussions that are difficult.
Okay. We have one question that got in before the cutoff period.
Sure.
What are the institutions that are supporting financially research in the LENR domain? Who's funding it? Who can fund it?
I think. Oh, that was a difficult question. Let me say. I mean, let's look at that ecosystem. I mean, if you look at the Industrial Heat, we know that it's funded by Cherokee Investment Partners and by Woodford in Britain. Officially, and there may be other owners as well and investors as well. Then you got, you got Brilliant Energy, for example, with several investors, among them Carl Page, who's the brother of Larry Page, the founder of Google. And there is this Swiss American company called Lenner Investment, and they're also investing in, I think they're investing in Brilliant Energy. And maybe also, I don't know, what about Nick Energy, the company by Piantelli. I mean, those are the investors maybe that there has been talked about in the Western countries. Then you got the corporations I mentioned when I showed the presentation. And in Russia, I believe that the government is investing money. It's apparently, which I didn't mention in the presentation, this Russian researcher, Parkhomov, who apparently managed to make a replication of the Rossi effect out of the Lugano report, which has been discussed a lot. It does seem to have funding. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that's known, but I get the impression that the Russian government understands that this is very important because, of course, of the effect on the oil price and the oil economy that Russia has. Since Russian academics are very good historically at LNR, there is a good reason for Russian government to fund this research and try to be at the very edge of this scientific development and commercial technology development in order to be able to not be disrupted and have some kind of foot inside this technology if oil price goes down dramatically further.
Okay. Well, that's the end of the questions. Thank you very much, Mats. And I will, I'm not sure who takes over now, but I'll check out for now. And thank you, Mats. And it's been great having you with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I think that Pat is taking over as host, right? I saw the message right now. Okay, Pat.
Yes, thank you so much, Mats, for this. And we're going to go now to Mike Phelan. And he is going to give us our summary.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, I'm Mike Phelan. And thank you very much, Mats. That was an excellent talk. Once again, Matt's book is available on Amazon.com, The Impossible Invention. It's an excellent way to come up to speed on this amazing story. For those of you who have been to our website, energy2.0.org, you'll know that our organization is educational in its mission. In the past, members of Energy 2.0 have given talks on LENR, and those presentations are available on our website. Also on our website, in the video tab, you'll find our previous webinar, Replicating the Rossi Effect. And Matt's presentation will be uploaded in the next couple of weeks. It's the intention of our organization to identify a method to demonstrate LENR as a practical means of producing heat and electricity, and to make those results open to the public. And we would also like to, in the future, supply research laboratories around the world with demonstration units of the Rossi reactor, if possible. This concludes our webinar today, and if you'd like to sign our mailing list on our website, we will notify you of our next seminar, which we should be having fairly shortly. Again, so thank you for watching, and that is the end of our webinar.